Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties, episode 21 for the year. Today, we are being graced by Tim Andrews of the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. Say hello, Tim.
Hello.
Uh, and Lee, who's all the way in WA. And I, of course, am Vickers. Today, we are going to talk about the big one that's been going on last week, which is the US presidential debate. Uh, for me, that's been pretty much all about Trump because, let's face it, he's
It is for everybody
America's
else as well, anyway.
yeah, he's America's Clive Palmer,
Yep.
essentially. I'm a little bit disappointed personally in Rand Paul's performance. I thought he would do better. Um, anyway, Tim, you've been watching this more prolifically than I have. What were your thoughts about the debate?
Look, I actually disagree somewhat that it's all about Trump, in that I think Trump's been getting a lot of the media, but I actually suspect we're going to start seeing the end of Donald Trump after this, and I think this for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's picked a big fight with Fox News. So far, all of Donald Trump's candidates have been things that, establishment Republicans, the establishment, etc. He hasn't taken on Fox News before, and unlike the establishment Republicans, who are an easy target, your average conservative voter actually trusts Fox News. I mean, 80% of them
I'd agree
trust
with that.
approval. So taking on Fox News and taking on Megyn Kelly, first of all, and during the debate, in his tweets afterwards, and then going on the circuit and going through and attacking her in a way that most people perceive as pretty much going and saying she's grumpy because she's having her period. That's how most people interpreted his comment, and I think probably correctly. I mean, I think he's probably taking on a bigger target than he can, and he's going to start dwindling. Secondly, though, a lot of the other people in the conservative race have had a chance to get their message out in a way they haven't to before. And so some other people are going to think, well, look, we thought Trump was the conservative, but we're now looking at Rubio. We're liking Rubio. Like, I think we're looking at Ted Cruz. We're liking Ted Cruz. So I think Rubio and Cruz, I think even more so, is going to start eating into Trump's message. I think what Trump has shown, and the international lesson here, is in the same way as Palmer showed it, the distrust and the sort of disillusionment with mainstream politics. You've seen, Clive Palmer get a large percent of the vote here. You've seen UKIP in the UK. You've seen the far right and the parties in Europe.
So the Eurosceptic parties.
Well, the Eurosceptic ones, and also some of the really dangerous sort of neo-Nazi-ish or far-right parties in Europe, whether it be Le Pen's party, the fascists in Greece, Hungary, the new right there. You are seeing a disillusionment with mainstream political processes. And if you look at it in Australia, I mean, in the Victorian state election, a quarter of upper house votes at the last election went to minor parties. That's gone up from 8% at the last election. In some states, I think in WA at the last federal election, Lee, about a quarter of the votes in the Senate went to minor parties. You are seeing throughout the West, generally, disillusionment with major parties. I think Trump's capitalizing on that. I think he's going to burn out because he's insane.
Just to put it lightly.
But I do worry, though, the role that, a sane person there might be able to have in terms of tapping into that level of discontent, that sort of populist, nationalist, protectionist policy. I mean, where you're seeing it. I mean, you look at in Australia, when you've got something like 80% of people believe in protectionism, believe in bank nationalisation, believe in legislated salary caps, even though, that might only be 80% of people in the polls, might translate to 10% of people in reality. That's a good sort of 10-50, because, you don't believe in polls. That's a good sizable chunk of people in the community out there who are waiting to be captured by these sort of people, whether it's Trump in the US, Bob Catter in Australia, Clive Palmer. What happens if we have someone like Clive Palmer in Australia who's not insane also? That's what I think the real danger is. And so that's sort of my general view on life, the universe, and everything. Sorry for going on a broad rant.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think the specific... Because, I mean, there's lots of people who are saying kind of what Donald Trump was saying in terms of particularly immigration. I mean, that's something that all pretty much all the Republicans, except maybe Jeb Bush and Rand Paul, they're all pretty, solidly anti-immigration.
No, Rand Paul's against immigration as well.
Oh, is he? Okay, I thought he had something. Anyway,
Look,
I think that the specific
anti-illegal immigration. There are
Yeah.
differences on.
Yeah.
I think the specific attraction for Donald Trump is that he speaks his mind. Like that's from when you, yeah. Which I mean, to be honest, it's not exactly the kind of mind you necessarily want to have speaking. But I think
this is one of the kinds of minds that needs a filter.
Yeah, it really does. But I think that's actually
assuming that's his mind and it's not a calculated political decision.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think it's the ego and the narcissism. I don't think is completely either. He's been spending his whole life like that, or it's not a ploy, like it's a real thing. But anyway, I think that has currency because so much of politics is filtered, is set. It's set statements. It was interesting hearing the reactions to Lindsey Graham, who was in the minor candidates forum, who basically he kept reading from a statement because he just literally, and I guess Hillary Clinton has the same problem where they just don't have any other way of talking to people. And so you got this character, and that's what Trump is, he's a character. Sure, not everybody's going to agree with him, but at least they can respect the fact that he speaks his mind. Which I think has sort of broader implications. I mean, I guess someone like a David Leinhelm, he's also somebody who speaks his mind. And I think, it's one of I guess he doesn't necessarily grab the attention, the headlines like a Clive Palmer or Donald Trump, which I think is partially because they are rich men to begin with. And they're already in the public imagination before they even started. But I think there's actually real kind of lessons to be learned there for a candidate, for a politician who, wants to kind of cut a niche for himself.
Jackie Lambie is the Jackie Lambie.
Yeah, actually, that's a good one. Yeah, yep. And so I think that's something that's a real thing that we should actually think about when we talk, especially for people who want to deliberately be libertarians. I guess Ron Paul is kind of the kind of, I mean, he's basically kind of what libertarians want to angle to be. Maybe not policy wise, but in terms of his appeal, he's somebody who attracted people to himself because he was consistent, because he's principled, and because he spoke his mind. Like, he never really held back. There's plenty of videos of him getting up in people's faces, and people getting mad because he said it as it is. So I think that's something that's probably a good lesson for libertarians from this fiasco. One other quick thing. I find it hilarious that, with all the bloviating about the Koch brothers and how much they influenced the Republican Party, Donald Trump is like the anti-Koch brothers. Like, he's a fascist, to put it as Jeffrey Tucker puts it. He basically says, and I agree, that Donald Trump is a fascist. It's just funny that this guy's drawing in the classic, not Nazi, but like a fascist. The protectionism, the catalyzation, the great man politics. The great man of history kind of view.
It's a bit.
And it's just so funny that he's this. For all the Koch brothers are so hated, and yet they stand for everything that a Democrat supporting crony capitalist like Donald Trump stands for.
I don't understand. Wait, are you saying that the Koch brothers are
the opposite? So they want free markets. They hate crony capitalism. They want they want immigration. Like, they want
This is not what my friends from the left have been telling me.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Right. They've been telling me that they're there to fund anti-democratic institutions that take away the rights of workers.
And to kill poor people. Yeah.
So I'm a little bit confused, if not infuriated.
Well, it's actually interesting. If you look, even President Obama the last couple of weeks has come out praising the Koch brothers on their work on criminal justice reform.
Of course.
Some of the left groups came out trying to criticize the Kochs, and even a lot of people on the far left said, look, there's an article in one of the far left think tanks saying, guys, stop criticizing the Kochs. This is insane. They're doing things that we all agree need to be done. But I think you're right in that, if the Kochs were as big and powerful in the right and the Republicans as everyone says they were, Trump wouldn't be there.
No.
Because they are pretty much the polar opposites on absolutely everything.
Yeah, you're right. And not just that, but there'd be a lot of politicians that wouldn't, I remember being at CPAC, and Tim, you were there with me at the beginning of this year, and it was really interesting, the results of some of the CPAC straw polls, where there was a huge disconnect between the presidential candidates that were up there giving speeches, and basically what the polling suggested. So, issues like marijuana legalization, right? It was quite in the opposite direction to the actual stated positions of the politicians. Gay marriage, again, very different, right?
One of the interesting things I noticed when I was living in DC was that no one who worked for a conservative, not libertarian, conservative think tank, pretty much, or Republican Party, who was 40 or under, supported the drug war. Like, no one. I don't think I found anyone in 4 years, because a lot of because they actually knew what they were talking about, firstly, but also conservative groups saw the effect that it had in destroying families. So you would, if you rip people out of a family and put them in jail, especially young fathers, for 2 years, what's that going to cause to the family unit? Whereas there's this disconnect between, there is that disconnect there between politics and pretty much the entire, like all the people who come to see, the people who.
I agree. Yeah.
Now, let's getting away from the insane candidates of the GOP and to the more sane ones. Tim, what are your thoughts on like Rubio and Cruz? I know you have strong opinions about Cruz, so maybe this would be a good opportunity for you to open with both barrels. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on like, Bush and Rubio and Cruz? Because I mean, they're really kind of the top tier candidates.
Sure. Look, I think Bush is the biggest winner of Trump's continuation, because the longer Trump stays in the race, the more oxygen he draws from every other conservative candidate, and the less they can build themselves up a name as an alternative to Bush. So Trump is Bush's greatest asset, I think, at the moment. And look, I think Bush would have been a great president if it was the year 2000. He's much more intelligent than George W., who would have been competent. He's got fairly well thought out conservative principles. But A, it's not 2000 anymore. B, his views aren't where the country is anymore. Some of his foreign policy views in particular are nasty. But more importantly, he denies
that. Not great either.
No, it's not. But it would have been, but he also denies the Republicans their greatest chance in 2016, which is Clinton's a return to the past. We're looking for the future.
Yep.
I think the person who I think though was the biggest loser of the debate was Governor Scott Walker. I think up until very recently, Governor Scott Walker was viewed as the conservative alternative to Jeb Bush, the sane one. He had a good track record in Wisconsin, good fundraising connections, a foot in the establishment camp, a foot in the grassroots camp. But he's just fizzled the last few weeks, and his debate performance was incredibly flat. The biggest winner, I think, was Marco Rubio. I think Marco Rubio performed absolutely amazingly on every single front. I think he was young, vibrant, energetic, consistent, but came across as intelligent, knew the issues. His point that, he's young, but this can't be a resume contest, because it's a resume contest, Clinton will win, was absolutely spot on. I think that, he was the clear winner. And as well as from the Kitty debate, I hear Carly Fiorina was the absolute winner as well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I can't say I watched that, but all accounts are that she was the winner.
I did not pay attention to that debate until someone on the ALS posted it. And yeah, I have to agree. Carly came off. She was incredibly Thatcherite, actually. Right? When she was talking, I got the impression of like, wow, this is basically an American version of Margaret Thatcher, which is a good thing, because Margaret Thatcher was pretty good, right, by all accounts. At that point, it's
awesome.
Yeah, she was awesome for that era, right?
For that era, yes.
Yeah, for that era. Now, I know there's going to be some libertarians who just immediately go like, Margaret Thatcher, come on, she wasn't a libertarian. No, she wasn't. She was a conservative, and she was a conservative in an era that. How long had Labour ruled before Thatcher came in?
Well, it was not that long, but it was really left Labour. But the Conservatives before her were also very left
as well,
economic party. I mean, and she was the one who, when there was a 2-hour debate at a Conservative Party conference on what we believe, came to the podium, took a copy of Hayek, threw it down on the podium, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we believe."
And it's not just that, but historically there was a massive decline after World War II of just parliaments in Britain.
And there was literally rubbish in the streets piling up for weeks.
I mean, it's still an area where it's hard to think socialism as a serious force within politics. I mean, as libertarians, we joke about socialism and we talk about everybody's a socialist. Yeah. But in terms of actual out-and-out socialism, that was still a thing in the 70s, where now it's not even serious.
Now we have actual examples where we can point to, hey, look, socialism results in this.
Yeah. So to have, Thatcher, she stood up and said, socialism is wrong. Like, that's a huge thing back in a time where socialism is still pretty fashionable.
And like literally in the 70s, the British government owned most of the owned large chunks of the means of production.
Yeah.
Like industries were all owned by the government.
Yeah.
I mean, just to go back to the kiddie table GOP debate. I mean, she wasn't exactly against some like real, like, I mean, there's some people there who I literally don't even know their names. Like, so she wasn't exactly against a formidable kind of group of people.
You are talking about people who are governors of states and senators. And
it's true. Well, Mike Huckabee's a governor of a state as well.
You might not know who George Pataki is, but he was governor of New York.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, that is kind of
these are people like your average Australian probably won't know them, but they're actually quite big names in the United States. They have multi-million-dollar campaigns behind them.
Yeah.
It's okay, fine. They're not in the range of we're going to spend $1 billion in an election, right? But it's not like they're not serious, right?
Yeah.
They're serious people. They just don't have the same
Well, Lindsey Graham's not serious.
Okay, fine, Lindsey Graham. But like people don't realize...
He did have a very funny ad though.
He did.
He? Okay, I didn't even know that.
So keep in mind that
he destroyed a phone. It was funny.
So keep in mind the American election is now big money. At the last election, $2 billion, $1 billion from each major candidate was spent on the election, right? This is a non-trivial amount of money, and when you think about it, it's essentially just like a penny auction, right? You've got essentially these two parties putting all their money in to try and extort as much out of the government as possible at the end of the day.
We should probably talk about Rand Paul before we finish up on this topic, because nominally he is like
I had my
the libertarian candidate, maybe.
Yeah, so.
Well, of course he's a libertarian candidate. How can you? He's easily the most libertarian in the field. If you're a libertarian and you don't support Rand Paul, there is something seriously wrong with you.
I agree. Well, what if?
No, I'm sorry. There is. I will say this on the record. If you're a libertarian and you do not support Rand Paul, you're an idiot. So if you're in that camp, Lee, I apologise, but
I have no opinion.
This is the biggest problem with libertarians. Every single other constituent group has. Oh, this is our guy. He's 80% pure. He's 80% pure, but he's our guy, and that's why they win. The Christian conservatives, the religious conservatives, the neocons, the business people, they all have their guy who they support, and that's why they win. And yet libertarians have this dick pulling. Yes, I'm going to use that phrase, purity contest, which is why they lose.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Once again, if you weren't Rand Paul might not be pure, but he's easily the most libertarian person in the field.
Yeah, that I went to know. The reason I use their quotes is just because, like, he himself, when asked was libertarian, he said he wasn't. So I'm just taking his own statements, which he believes himself to be a constitutional conservative or a constitutional Republican, whatever that is. Like, he at least publicly at this point hasn't identified as a libertarian. Where I guess, I mean, he's obviously not trying to be his father, which is fine. He doesn't have to be, and I agree with you. Like, I think he is the best candidate, and certainly a lot better than. All of them.
I will say this. So in terms of the GOP primary, absolutely. You should absolutely support Rand Paul, right? Now, the question becomes, a lot of libertarians outside of the GOP umbrella will often talk about Gary Johnson, right? And that was.
And when it comes to the general, they can vote for Gary Johnson all they want. The question is, at the moment, is it good for the Liberty movement to support Rand Paul, or is it good for the Liberty movement to tear down Rand Paul? The answer to that is a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is, he's not doing very well at the moment, and this is for several reasons. One, what I've just mentioned with libertarians being insane. Secondly, the fact that it's now become.
Sorry.
Pardon?
You once said a quote, right? It's the world's largest sort of shooting circle.
Circular firing squad.
Yeah, circular firing squad.
That's not a Tim term, that's a common term. But the problem we've got is that now that immigration is one of the main issues, and secondly, foreign policy, where Republicans are traditionally more hawkish, this is hurting Rand Paul. I mean, his strength is domestics and the economy and those sort of things. I think that the fact that he can roll his eyes at Chris Christie's 9/11, because 9/11 comments, shows the GOP's starting to move in that direction, because he didn't get booed. He would have last couple of election cycles. But I think that and again, Trump's taken his oxygen as the angry, discontented, we're the anti-establishment, because he was anti-establishment, and Trump's taken his oxygen.
He was anti-establishment before it became cool.
Yeah. So he was. So all of those factors are really hurting him. Look, but debates were never his strength. He's not a good speaker. He's trying, but it's not his natural element, and he wasn't given that much time.
No,
so
I mean, I think that's he got literally half the time of Trump,
less than half.
So I would have liked to have seen like what he had to say more, because I mean, I think he does put up like, okay, his response to some things not great about the Iran deal, okay, whatever, but. I would have loved to see him slap about Chris Christie on NSA a lot more. And there's lots of other stuff where he would have had a good opportunity to sort of take basically take a line that actually where most of Americans are, Like, that's the thing. Like, Rand Paul's actually, when you look at the views of most Americans, he is where they're at. So, I think it's, it's probably not totally unrealistic to say he is the best kind of general candidate, like for the general election. He's the best Republican candidate for the general election, as opposed to maybe like a Jeb Bush or a Cruz, who's more of a a GOP primary candidate. They really appeal to the base. All right.
Yeah. Sorry, are we going to the
other
one?
We'll move on to the...
oh, yeah, so, yeah, it's fine.
Also, Cruz is evil and don't trust him.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to say that. I was trying to bait you with that.
Yeah, I have to admit...
Charlatan.
Yeah,
Charlatan will destroy everything good in the world to get power.
Speaking of things that are destroying everything good in the power... Oh, sorry.
Oh, that was a good segue.
Yeah, that was a really good segue.
Yeah.
How about back to political entitlements? Yeah. So back to Australia. So there was a article recently published. So you might have remembered last week I was ranting on and on about how these political sort of investigations into parliamentary expenses never amount to anything because they just get swept under the rug. So here's the great thing. The Department of Finance has basically said that the investigation into Bronny's chopper gate thingo and any other finance thing that they uncover is going to remain a secret. So, yes. So let's...
Unsurprisingly. Well, I mean, there's already a cover-up going on because when Christopher Pyne declines to take the opportunity to slap about Labor, you know that there's something that they're trying to cover something up, that they're trying to play a very, very dead bat. And, we've seen that this week, well, actually, not even declined to attack Labor. He actually defended Tony Burke, which is, I mean, how often does Christopher Pyne defend Labor ever? So, I mean, that gives you an idea of how, and that's because his snout is in the trough. Like, that's why Abbott didn't attack them either. Like, whoever attacks, reporters are going to say, okay, let's look at their entitlements. Oh, what do you know? They're just as greedy as the guy they were attacking. And that's essentially why Tony Burke got himself into trouble in the first place, because he was, aggressively attacking Bronwyn Bishop. Mm-hmm. And of course they have to hide it because they don't want to let the public know that they've got the snouts in the trough,
Well, the ATA's been running a campaign on this, haven't they?
Yeah, so look, I think you're absolutely right that they don't want the public to know. And the thing is that we've seen every time that there's been an expense scandal. So we've seen it now. We saw it a year ago. We saw it 2 years ago. I remember when Howard got elected, we saw it in Howard's first year of government. We had travel rorts. I can't remember much before 1996, but I'm assuming it happened before then as well.
Yeah.
And they put in new codes, they put in new rules, they put in new guidelines. But the fact of the matter is these will always be watered, because very often things are within the letter of the law, but not in the spirit. So they might. People like free money. People like free things. So people become very accustomed to taking perks of office. And the longer you're in office, I think it's like the frog boiling thing. You don't actually realize that what you're doing becomes so extravagant because you take a trip here, you take a trip here. You think, oh, look, I'm tired. I'll take business. All right, I'll take my family. And it just starts growing and growing and growing. But the way to solve it isn't to put in new bureaucrats to administer rules, because the rules will probably still be followed, but rather is transparency. If people easily can see and can find out what their MPs are doing, these things are going to stop pretty quickly, because you're not going to want you'll see the fact that your MP is flying business class with his entire family Sydney to Canberra every day. Or going on extravagant holidays. People can rather than having a couple of public servant bureaucrats looking at it. You can actually, or just even a couple of journos, you can start crowdsourcing this. So you can actually see, hang on, this politician went to a wedding there, but he claimed a fundraising here. And people will start putting two and two together, because you have a lot of people out there like me who have nothing better to do with their lives than to go through their spreadsheets, because we're very sad individuals. So if you open transparency up, as the ATA is calling for, I think that that's the only way you're going to be able to start breaking the culture, which is the politician's age of entitlement.
Yep. One politician has signed up, haven't they? What was his name? Mal Brough?
Yeah, look, Mal Brough has just announced that he's going to put all of his expenditure on his website, which is a good step. I think what we eventually need is an online portal which you can search all MPs by how they're, by different ways. So search by MP, search by purposes, by date, search by travel. Just an easy sort of online portal. But the software for this is actually available. It's all open source, because like dozens of jurisdictions around the world do this, not just for travel, but for everything. And this is the ultimate goal of the ATA's campaign, which I know some people like Senator McGrath, Senator Day, Senator Lionhelm, Senator Bernardi. In New South Wales, the ACT, Alistair Coe has been pushing this. New South Wales, Scott Barlow has been pushing it. But this is to put all spending online. Don't just limit it to all politician spending. And why not? It's our money. Shouldn't we know how our money is being spent? It's really easy to do. Dozens of places around the world do it. Every time it's been dirt cheap. It's saved so much money each time. It saves money. Like Texas, I use Texas because, same population of Australia roughly. Cost them $300,000 to build the system. $8.7 million in saving in the first year. From things like random people going through and finding, hang on, this line item, you're having two departments paying for the same thing and nobody's realized it.
Yeah.
Or you've got all these printer toner cartridges. If you consolidate it, you'll save $100,000. These are two specific examples from Texas.
Yeah,
so this
I
is
remember.
a no-brainer policy-wise that we're going to keep trying to push. But I would strongly encourage everyone interested to look up the ATA's campaign on this. Maybe start with just travel routes and then move from there.
I mean, I guess one of the other good things is hopefully from this, the next step is really for organisations like the ATA or others to essentially, do some sort of a report card system or some way of kind of like providing a sort of voters an easily to recognise kind of way. I guess it's a bit like the Grover Norquist's tax pledge. Yeah, something like that I think is a great idea. Even you can argue whether it's useful or not, but just in terms of saying we're an organisation, we're dedicated to, MP spending habits. We give a report card, and then when it comes around to voting time, you can, they can stick a little thing on their flyers or their website where saying, this is the report card I got. Like I guess things like that is kind of the next step, because and open sourcing rewards that.
It's hard to do that for some things you can do, like how much travel did they put on their website. But beyond that, because of how strong party discipline is, it gets a lot harder. Like the Grover Pledge, for instance, I'm not sure how we can do that in Australia because
it's not really possible because breaking party line.
But you can't cross party lines.
I think it's more just having like private organisations that interface with politics in meaningful ways. I guess that's for me what I think is the next step in all these sorts of things, because that's ultimately how you keep politicians accountable, is by having somebody watching the politicians. Because if the politicians only watch themselves, and the media, well, obviously the media have a huge part to play in that, but they're not the only ones who can do it. And so I guess it's kind of what I, hopefully with having these sorts of portals, having that sort of transparency, is that it actually enables more kind of opportunities for private, for essentially transparency from the public, and for people who might actually care about this stuff. Well, I guess we've got a couple of minutes left. Maybe Tim, you want to tell us a bit more about the ATA for those who maybe don't know who you are? We've mentioned the ATA a few times.
Sure. So the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, it's we're a grassroots free market activist advocacy organisation. We fight for smaller government, so less tax, less regulation, less waste. We have a number of subsidiary and affiliate and partner organisations that focus on small, specific niche projects. We also have state branches that focus on specific issues in particular areas. But I think, Lee, you're involved in the WA.
Yes, I am, in fact.
That a little bit We should have a chat about that. But
yeah.
The idea is that we're not a top-down, centralized command and control style organization, because it doesn't work in the economy. It shouldn't work in an organization. So a lot of the things we also do, as well as our national campaigns, is we try and empower local groups to sort of find an issue that affects them in their community, run with that, and try and build a more free and more fair Australia.
Down with the Potato Marketing Corporation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to take it home to WA there.
Yeah.
Which, without any understanding of what Lee does, is probably 90% of his outrage.
Yeah. Well, yes, something like that.
But the thing is, we actually had a big campaign ready for that, and then the government decided, like 2 days before we were going to do our campaign, that they were going to abolish it.
Yeah.
That would have been so much fun.
Yeah.
I had whole ideas about somebody dressed up as a potato, free the potato.
Yeah.
Like potatoes being in handcuffs and like a little jail for a potato. And like have the free the potato following ministers around and things, and all gone to naught. Oh well.
On the upside, government is so useless and dysfunctional. There's probably dozens of other ways you can come up with clever campaigns. So there shouldn't be any shortage of that in the near future.
So anyway, that's episode 21. Thanks, Lee and Tim, for joining me, and I'll catch everyone else next week.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you very much. See ya.